Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. That is the thesis of the Lord of the Rings series. Tolkien's legendarium, however, also consists of other works and characters who inhabit Middle-earth, and reinforce this key philosophy. One of these characters is Eol, who is called the Dark Elf, yet it's not like Oakenshield, a deed name alone. No, for Dark Elves were a group of the Eldar, who refused the Valar's call to go to Aman, and behold the light of the two trees. And yet the title, when used in reference to Eol, seems to serve the dual purpose of an epithet and an identification of him being one of the Dark Elves and their lineage. Let us look further at this term and Eol himself, shall we, fans? Allons-y! Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
My children, you are free.
Who are the Dark Elves of Arda? In the First Age, the Eldar lived happily in Middle-earth, but in the coming ages, their power began to decline, and they were restricted to wandering groups, or small havens in Lindon, Lorien, Rivendell, and such. These were the Dark Elves. They were called so because they consisted of the Avari, Teleri, Sindar, and according to some, Noldor populations, who refused to or were unable to go to Aman when the Valar called, while some of these elves, such as Galadriel, are called the Calaquendi, or those who had dwelt in the Undying Lands. The Avari and others had not been to the land the hobbits called Fairy before, and thus were called the Dark Elves. This was an umbrella term for all elves who remained in Middle-earth, and whose powers waned, unlike those in Aman. Now that we know who the term references, let's talk about that guy, who some call the most powerful Dark Elf. And no, we don't mean in terms of power, like Galadriel, who is sometimes called an Eldar, or a political strategist like Elrond, again often called an Eldar, or even lineage or deeds. No, this is Eol, an elf who was called Eol the Dark Elf, for perhaps his deeds or mayhap his skill with dark metal. Some fans even say that it is because he shunned the ways of the light-loving Noldor and instead preferred the stars of the twilight. But since that was shown in a positive light in The Hobbit: Desolation of Smaug, we cannot judge. Fans have cited other reasons for this title, such as his treatment of his wife, his dark and gloomy personality that caused him to shun other elves, his mastery over the new dark element he created, and his aforementioned actions toward his wife and child, which we will check out at the later half of the video, and the cave-like hills he dwelled in, known as Nan Elmoth, all contribute to his title, yet none as much as his actions. Yet despite all his deeds, this Sindar Avari elf was a great friend of the nearby Dwaro, which make us wonder why Tolkienian dwarves are often shown in a bad light. Then again, Durin is revered by fans, so perhaps that's a narrow view. And there's also the fact that other, better elves were friends with the Dwaro, as indicated by the Gates of Moria. Another example is hopefully the friendship fans say is inspired by Eol and the Dwaro's relationship, the friendship between Elrond and the Dwaro in Rings of Power. Moving on, let's take a look at the history of Eol. Eol's biography. A dark elf or Morroquendi who had never gone to Aman. Eol lived in Nan Elmoth, which was part of the Eldar kingdom of Doriath in Middle-earth. He was born in the Year of the Trees, and had great skill in the forge, especially at metalwork. Fans, if you want to know how skilled he was, we will tell you a nugget we found. He carved swords out of a meteorite metal. Yes, like Sokka's sword in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Season 3. Eol's space swords were called Anglakel and Anguiriel. Beyond these, with the help of his friendship with the nearby Dwaro, this dark-haired elf also fashioned a new and dark metal of great strength and malleability, called Galvorn, which he then made personal armor out of. No wonder he was called the Dark Elf, huh? Reclusive, living in caves, with dark hair and his skin covered in dark armor. He was like if To Kill a Mockingbird's Boo Radley's equally reclusive brother decided to turn evil and demonstrate that by dressing like Darth Vader from the original Star Wars trilogy. And then his deeds were so dark, if we go by the Western colloquialism where dark deeds mean evil deeds, that even Anakin Skywalker at his most Sithly stage would beat this guy up. What did he do? Be prepared, fans. This elf was seriously weird and messed up, but others might perceive his initial actions as romantic, though it also gives dubious consent. Basically, he noticed an elven beauty, Erethdel, the sister of the king of Gondolin himself, from afar, and put enchantments around her using the light, so that the only way she could escape the forest would lead to his place. Somehow she married him, which some sources say was against her will, and had a baby boy with him, to whom his controlling nature extended. What happened after marriage? See, fans, Eol wasn't winning any Husband of the Year awards. He decided he hated the Noldor and thus forbade his wife, Erethdel, and his child, Maeglin, to visit their Noldorian kin in Gondolin, the hidden city of elves. Perhaps because she was tired of his horse crap, or because of the non-consensual actions, his wife ran away with their son, while the Dark Elf was at a feast in Nogrod. Of course, he followed them, and of course, when he demanded his son back, he was refused because no one is giving paternity rights to someone who takes women against their will, now are they? The Dark Elf's anger at this was so great that he tried to kill that very son. I mean, that's very much the mentality of if I can't have them, no one can. Except in this case, it's his own child. Erythel, being one of the mothers like Lily Potter who would do anything to ensure the safety of her child, got in the way and was killed from the poison on the javelin. This enraged the good folk at Gondolin and their king, which led to the Dark Elf being given a death sentence. He was thrown over the steep cliffside of Caragdur. Yet, being the person he was, of course, the Dark Elf cursed his son all the way down, and boy did this sentencing have repercussions, for it was technically kinslaying, even if said kin was a controlling and murderous person. While some may decide that such people deserve none of the respect, love, and chances given to kin, especially after an entire marriage where he did not apparently change his ways, others would disagree, and such was the case in Gondolin. Most of the folks were of the first opinion, yet on the other side was Idril, who strongly disapproved of kinslaying, and this drove a wedge between her and her kin. Fans also say that this action sowed the first seeds of evil in the Great Elven City. What a disaster. Couldn't he use his skills for good and arm the world against Sauron and Melkor, like he armed Thingol as thanks for letting him stay in Doriath? Apparently no. He had to be controlling and murderous instead. Actions have consequences, and this elf's actions had lots of fallout, such as one of the swords he made being used to cause severe devastation in the hands of Tudor, an elf. Another consequence was Eöl getting cemented as the Dark Elf of Middle-earth. I wonder if the Age of Men has a dark man or dark woman of Middle-earth, and what their story is. Or do we have a dark hobbit? Lobelia Sackville Baggins did steal Bilbo's silverware, but she also sacrificed her son and beat the goons of Sauron, so it couldn't be here. Though that reminds me, what do you think of Professor Tolkien's criticism of unchecked industrialism, and his apparent love for the countryside and nature that some fans have taken the sacking of the Shire to indicate? Let us know in the comments, while we present some last thoughts on the Dark Elf of Arda. A marvelous review. Eöl, the Dark Elf, shows us that not only the Firstborn are light and goddess, making us wonder if the world of the Lord of the Rings is as black and white as many fans assume it to be. We have heroic Dwaro like Durin's line, and we have elves who have fallen from grace like Eöl and Feanor. This makes me wonder if we could have orcs who have morality, or is that where the professor drew a line and said they were too corrupted by Sauron to do good? Those sources say that the idea that orcs equal evil apparently bothered the professor, despite him not being able to think of any in-story narrative where these reflections of the worst of humanity's impulses won't be evil. So there's that. Sir Terry Pratchett tried solving this by saying that while orcs were bad, it was nurture not nature, as they were raised and corrupted and tortured to be monstrous. Here's an idea. All questions that would make for amazing discourse in the comments. We cannot wait to learn from you and share more videos about the world of the Lord of the Rings. Stay tuned perhaps? And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!